Far away from Earth, in a galaxy filled with stars and mysteries, there was an organization known as the Galactic Council. This council wasn't made up of humans. It consisted of beings from advanced civilizations scattered across the universe. Their job was to keep peace among planets, monitor less developed worlds, and ensure no one broke the rules that kept the cosmos safe. For years, they had been watching Earth closely but never interfering. Humans were seen as primitive creatures, clever enough to build tools and machines, but not smart enough to pose any real danger. But then, something strange happened. One day, while scanning the vastness of space, their sensors picked up a faint signal, a sound wave traveling through the void. At first, it seemed like background noise, nothing unusual. But when they analyzed it further, they realized it wasn't just random static, it was music, human music, a melody played on an instrument, drifting out into the universe like a message in a bottle. The council was baffled. Music? From Earth? They had always thought of human culture as basic, focused mostly on survival and conflict. But this was different. The melody was hauntingly beautiful, carrying emotions that transcended language. Some council members described it as melancholic yet hopeful, while others felt it stirred something deep inside them, something primal and unexplainable. At first, they dismissed it as a fluke. Maybe it was some kind of accident, a burst of energy caused by human experiments gone wrong. But soon more sounds followed. Different melodies arrived, each unique but equally captivating. There were rhythms that pulsed like heartbeats, harmonies that blended seamlessly, and vibrations that resonated long after the notes faded. It didn't take long for the council to realize these weren't random noises. Humans were creating art so powerful it could travel across light years and still hold its essence intact. This discovery sparked heated debates within the council chambers. Some argue that music was harmless, just another form of expression. After all, every civilization had its own way of communicating joy, sorrow, or unity. Why should human music be treated differently? Others, however, weren't convinced. They pointed out how complex the compositions were, how carefully crafted the notes seemed to be. Could it really be possible that such primitive beings had stumbled upon something so profound without understanding its full potential? And then came the question that no one wanted to ask aloud. What if this wasn't just music? What if it was something else entirely? You see, sound isn't just noise, it's energy, vibrations moving through air, or even through the vacuum of space under certain conditions. If harnessed correctly, those vibrations could do incredible things. They could heal, inspire, or destroy. The council knew this better than anyone. Many advanced civilizations had already weaponized sound, using it to disrupt matter, shatter structures, or incapacitate enemies. Was it possible that humans, unknowingly, were doing the same thing? As the discussions grew more intense, the council decided to dig deeper. They sent probes closer to Earth to gather more data. These probes recorded everything: street performers playing guitars, orchestras performing symphonies, tribal drums echoing in remote villages, and even children laughing and singing nursery rhymes. Each recording added another layer to the mystery. What struck the council most was the diversity of human music. Unlike other species who often stuck to rigid patterns or mathematical precision, humans embraced chaos. Their compositions were unpredictable, raw, and deeply emotional. Sometimes the notes clashed, creating tension. Other times they flowed together like water, soothing and calming. It was as if humans poured their entire existence into their music, their struggles, dreams, fears, and triumphs. Some council members found themselves drawn to it. They couldn't explain why, but listening to human music made them feel alive in ways they hadn't experienced before. Others, however, grew increasingly uneasy. They saw danger in those chaotic melodies. If humans could evoke such strong emotions in highly evolved beings like themselves, what might they be capable of achieving with more time and resources? The tipping point came when a particularly unusual recording reached the council. It was a low-frequency hum, almost imperceptible to the ear, but it carried a strange resonance. When played back in the council chamber, it caused subtle vibrations in the walls. Nothing major, but enough to raise alarms. "This is not art," one council member declared during a meeting. "This is science, and we have no idea what humans are truly capable of." Another countered, "Perhaps we're overreacting. Humans may not even understand what they're doing. Shouldn't we give them the benefit of the doubt?" The debate raged on, dividing the council into two factions. One side believed humans needed to be monitored closely, possibly even quarantined, to prevent their music from spreading uncontrollably. The other side argued that cutting off contact would only make things worse. Ignoring Earth wouldn't stop the signals from reaching other parts of the galaxy. In the end, the council agreed on one thing. Human music was unlike anything they'd encountered before. Whether it was a gift or a threat remained unclear, but one thing was certain. They couldn't ignore it anymore. Little did they know, this was only the beginning. The melodies drifting through space were just the tip of the iceberg. Beneath the surface lay secrets that would challenge everything the council thought they knew about humanity and about themselves. The Galactic Council's curiosity about human music only deepened as they continued their investigations. They had always assumed that sound was just a form of entertainment, a way for beings to pass the time or express themselves. But what they discovered about human acoustic creations challenged everything they thought they knew. Humans weren't just making noise. They were manipulating vibrations in ways that bordered on scientific genius. It started with ancient artifacts. The Council's probes, now orbiting Earth, began scanning historical sites where humans had once gathered to create music. One location stood out, a remote mountain region where large metal bowls were used in rituals. These bowls, known as Tibetan singing bowls, produced sounds that seemed to ripple through the air like waves. When struck or rubbed with a mallet, they emitted tones so pure and steady that they could be felt as much as heard. What fascinated the council most was how these bowls interacted with their surroundings. The vibrations didn't just fade away, they lingered, spreading outward and affecting nearby objects. Dust particles danced, water rippled, and even solid materials like stone showed signs of subtle movement. It was as if the sound itself carried energy capable of influencing matter. At first, the council dismissed this as coincidence. Surely such effects were minor and unintentional. But then they turned their attention to modern human innovations. On Earth, scientists were experimenting with sound in ways that went far beyond ancient traditions. There were devices designed to heal wounds using specific frequencies, machines that cleaned surfaces with ultrasonic waves, and tools that shattered kidney stones without surgery. Humans were learning to harness the power of resonance, often without realizing the broader implications of their work. One incident caught the Council's attention more than any other. It happened during a military exercise conducted by one of Earth's governments. Soldiers were testing a new weapon, a device that emitted low-frequency sound waves. When activated, the weapon sent vibrations through the ground, causing buildings to collapse as though hit by an earthquake. No explosives were involved, yet the destruction was undeniable. The Council watched this unfold with growing unease. If humans could use sound to destroy structures, what else might they achieve? Could they develop weapons capable of targeting living beings? Or worse, entire populations? And the possibilities were both thrilling and terrifying. Back in the council chambers, opinions were divided. Some members argued that humans were simply exploring the natural properties of sound, much like other species had done in the past. Others believed humanity was on the verge of a breakthrough, one that could either elevate them to greatness or plunge the galaxy into chaos. To better understand the situation, the Council decided to conduct experiments of their own. Using recordings collected from Earth, they played various types of human music in controlled environments aboard their ships. At first, nothing unusual happened. The melodies sounded pleasant enough, evoking emotions similar to those experienced by the council members who had listened earlier. But then they tried something different. And instead of playing the music at normal volumes, they amplified it, boosting the frequencies to levels far beyond what humans could tolerate. The results were startling. In one test, a high-pitched tone caused sensitive equipment to malfunction. Lights flickered, screens glitched, and communication systems briefly went offline. In another experiment, a deep bass note resonated through the ship's hull, creating vibrations that rattled loose components and left crew members feeling disoriented. One particularly intense composition triggered a chain reaction, causing a probe to overload and explode. These incidents confirmed the Council's worst fears. Human music wasn't just art. It was a potential weapon. And unlike traditional arms, which required physical projectiles or energy beams, sound-based attacks could strike without warning, bypassing shields and defenses. Faced with this revelation, the Council took drastic action. They classified all human acoustic creations as acoustic weapons and enacted strict laws prohibiting any interaction with Earth's musical output. Probes were recalled, data was locked away in secure archives, and discussions about humanity became taboo. To most council members, the risk outweighed the reward. Better to isolate Earth and let humans remain ignorant of their own power than to gamble with the stability of the galaxy. Yet not everyone agreed with this decision. A small but vocal group within the council believed that banning human music was short-sighted. They argued that humanity's ability to blend emotion and science was extraordinary, a trait worth nurturing rather than suppressing. By cutting off contact, or the Council might be squandering an opportunity to learn from Earth's unique approach to creativity and innovation. This internal conflict simmered beneath the surface, dividing the Council into factions. On one side were the traditionalists, who prioritized caution and control. On the other were the progressives, who advocated for engagement and understanding. Neither group could convince the other, and tensions continued to rise. Meanwhile, back on Earth, humans remained blissfully unaware of the storm brewing in the stars. To them, music was still just music, a source of joy, comfort, and connection. Musicians composed songs to celebrate love, mourn loss, and inspire change. Performers filled concert halls with applause, while street artists serenaded passers-by for spare change. Scientists tinkered with sound technology and are dreaming of new applications in medicine, engineering, and beyond. No one suspected that their melodies were being scrutinized by alien ears, or that their experiments were sparking debates in distant galaxies. For humans, music was a gift, a universal language that transcended borders and brought people together. They couldn't imagine it being seen as anything else. But the truth was far more complicated. Human music had already begun to ripple through the cosmos, touching lives in ways no one could have predicted. And as the Council struggled to decide its fate, whispers of rebellion spread among the stars. Some aliens, inspired by Earth's melodies, began to question the Council's authority. If humans could create such beauty and power, why should they be silenced? Little did anyone know. And these questions would soon lead to actions and consequences that would reshape the galaxy forever. Deep within the Galactic Council's vast archives, a group of rogue council members gathered in secret. These individuals didn't agree with the decision to ban all interaction with human music. To them, labeling it as an acoustic weapon was premature and unfair. They believed humanity's creations deserved closer study, not because they wanted to exploit Earth's potential, but because they saw something extraordinary in those melodies. Something that could change the way the galaxy understood art, science, and even life itself. The rogue faction knew they couldn't defy the Council openly. Doing so would risk exposure, punishment, or worse. Instead, they decided to take matters into their own hands. Under the cover of darkness, both literal and metaphorical, they began conducting unauthorized experiments. Their goal was simple yet dangerous: to test the true nature of human music and uncover its hidden powers. Their first step was to gather more recordings. Using outdated probes left over from earlier missions, they sent devices back to Earth to collect fresh samples. This time, they focused on specific types of music, genres and styles that seemed particularly complex or emotionally charged. Classical symphonies, tribal chants, electronic beats, and even experimental compositions made the list. Each recording was carefully stored and transported to a hidden lab located on a remote asteroid far from prying eyes. Once the data was secured, the real work began. The Rogue Council members set up a series of controlled tests designed to measure the effects of human music under various conditions. At first, they played the recordings at normal volumes, observing how they influenced the environment. Much like before, the results were intriguing but not alarming. The music evoked strong emotions in the listeners, feelings of joy, sadness, excitement, or calm, but nothing that suggested immediate danger. Encouraged by these findings, the group decided to push further. They increased the volume, amplifying the frequencies until the sound waves became almost tangible. It was here that things took a turn. One experiment involved playing a piece of classical music, a sweeping orchestral arrangement filled with dramatic crescendos and deep, resonant bass notes. As the volume rose, the vibrations grew stronger, rattling equipment and causing loose objects in the lab to shift. Then something unexpected happened. A glass container holding a sample of liquid cracked under the pressure of the sound waves. Moments later, the liquid inside began to bubble and froth, as if reacting to the vibrations. The Rogue Council members exchanged uneasy glances. Was this evidence of sound's ability to alter matter? Or was it merely a coincidence? Determined to find out, they repeated the test multiple times, each attempt yielding similar results. The implications were staggering. If human music could affect liquids, what else might it be capable of? Emboldened by their discoveries, the group moved on to more daring experiments. They played tribal drumming rhythms, focusing on the low-frequency beats that pulse like heartbeats. When amplified, these sounds created waves of energy that rippled through the lab. Panels vibrated, lights flickered, and one member reported feeling a strange, tingling sensation in their extremities. It was as if the music was reaching into their very cells, disrupting the natural order of things. But the most shocking incident occurred during an experiment involving modern electronic music. The composition featured heavy bass drops and sharp staccato beats layered over eerie synthesizer tones. When played at maximum volume, the sound waves triggered a catastrophic chain reaction. A nearby probe, left idle in the corner of the lab, suddenly sparked and emitted a high-pitched whine. Within seconds, it exploded, sending shards of metal flying across the room. The explosion forced the Rogue Council members to halt their experiments immediately. Shaken but undeterred, they regrouped to assess the damage. Though no one was injured, the incident confirmed their worst suspicions. Human music wasn't just powerful, it was unpredictable. Even the simplest melodies carried the potential for chaos when pushed beyond their natural limits. Despite the risks, the group refused to abandon their mission. They had uncovered something remarkable, something that challenged everything the Council thought it knew about sound and its capabilities. Human music wasn't merely a form of expression. It was a force of nature, raw and untamed. And while it held immense promise, it also posed significant dangers. As they debated their next move, tensions within the group began to surface. Some argued that they should share their findings with the rest of the Council, hoping to convince them to reconsider their stance on human music. Others believed secrecy was still the best option, fearing that revealing the truth would only lead to stricter restrictions, or worse, outright hostility toward Earth. In the end, they settled on a compromise. They would continue studying human music in private, documenting every discovery in meticulous detail. But they also vowed to tread carefully, knowing that one misstep could have dire consequences, not just for themselves, but for humanity as well. Unbeknownst to the Rogue Council members, their actions hadn't gone entirely unnoticed. Rumors of their experiments began to spread, whispered among alien diplomats and traders who frequented the Galactic network. Some dismissed the stories as exaggerations, while others listened with growing interest. Among those intrigued were oppressed species living under the shadow of the Galactic Council's authority. For years, they had endured tyranny and injustice, their voices silenced by fear and oppression. Now they saw hope in the tales of human music, a force so potent it could shatter barriers and inspire rebellion. Inspired by these whispers, a few brave souls sought out the rogue council members, pleading for access to Earth's recordings. At first, the group resisted, unwilling to involve outsiders in their dangerous work. But as more requests poured in, they realized they couldn't ignore the growing demand. Slowly, cautiously, they began sharing select pieces of human music with trusted allies, instructing them to use the recordings wisely. What started as a small act of defiance soon snowballed into a movement. Across the galaxy, oppressed beings began listening to human melodies, drawing strength from their raw emotion and unyielding spirit. Songs of resilience became anthems for freedom fighters. Tribal chants inspired unity among scattered tribes. Even electronic beats found their place, fueling protests and rallies with infectious energy. For the first time in generations, the galaxy felt alive with possibility. Humanity's music had become more than just sound. It was a catalyst for change, a spark igniting flames of hope in the darkest corners of the universe. Yet amidst this newfound optimism, the rogue council members couldn't shake a lingering sense of dread. They had unleashed something they barely understood, something that could either heal or harm depending on how it was used. And as the movement gained momentum, they wondered whether they had done the right thing or set the stage for an even greater conflict. While the Galactic Council and rogue factions debated the true nature of human music, life on Earth continued as usual. Humans remained blissfully unaware that their melodies had sparked debates, experiments, and even rebellions across the stars. To them, music was still just music, a way to express feelings, tell stories, or bring people together. It wasn't a weapon, a tool, or a force for galactic change. It was simply part of being human. In cities, musicians played guitars on street corners, their chords echoing through bustling crowds. In rural villages, elders taught children traditional songs passed down through generations, each note carrying whispers of history and culture. In laboratories, scientists experimented with sound healing techniques, using vibrations to reduce stress, ease pain, and promote recovery. For humans, music was everywhere, and yet it was so ordinary that no one thought twice about its significance. But beyond Earth's atmosphere, the ripples of humanity's creations were spreading farther than anyone could have imagined. The melodies that drifted into space didn't just fade into silence. They found listeners. And those listeners weren't just curious aliens. They were beings desperate for hope. Among the first to embrace human music were oppressed species living under the shadow of tyrannical regimes. These civilizations had long been silenced, their cultures suppressed, their voices drowned out by fear and control. When they heard Earth's compositions, raw, emotional, and unfiltered, it resonated with something deep inside them. They recognized themselves in the chaos of human rhythms, the defiance in tribal drums, and in the resilience in soaring symphonies. One particular recording became a symbol of resistance, a hauntingly beautiful piece that combined ancient chants with modern electronic beats. The chant spoke of survival against all odds, while the electronic layer added urgency and drive. Together they created a sound that felt alive, pulsing with determination. Oppressed beings began sharing this track secretly, playing it during secret gatherings and protests. It gave them courage when they needed it most, reminding them that even in darkness there was light. Word of human music's impact spread quickly through underground networks. Soon, other marginalized groups joined the movement, each finding inspiration in different styles. Some connected with classical compositions, drawing strength from their intricate harmonies and grandeur. Others gravitated toward rock and roll, fueled by its rebellious energy and raw emotion. Even jazz, with its improvisational spirit, inspired creativity and adaptability among freedom fighters. The Galactic Council couldn't ignore what was happening. Reports poured in from across the galaxy, detailing how human music was uniting once divided communities and fueling acts of defiance. At first, the Council dismissed these accounts as exaggerations. Surely mere sound couldn't inspire such widespread change. But as evidence mounted, they realized the truth. Humanity's unintentional influence was growing stronger every day. Fearing the consequences, the Council convened an emergency session. The chamber buzzed with tension as members argued over how to respond. Some called for immediate action, suggesting they launch a campaign to discredit human music or even destroy Earth's ability to create it. Others urged caution, warning that any aggressive move would only strengthen the rebellion. "We cannot fight an idea," one council member said, his voice calm but firm. "Human music is more than sound. It is emotion, memory, and hope wrapped into one. You can silence instruments, but you cannot silence hearts." His words struck a chord, forcing the council to confront an uncomfortable reality. Human music wasn't dangerous because it was a weapon. It was dangerous because it was powerful. It tapped into universal truths that transcended species, language, and borders. Trying to suppress it would only make it more appealing, turning Earth's melodies into symbols of resistance. Meanwhile, the rogue council members watched the unfolding events with mixed emotions. On one hand, they were proud of what they had started. Their decision to share human music had ignited a spark of hope in the galaxy, proving that even the smallest actions could lead to monumental change. On the other hand, they worried about the unintended consequences. What if the rebellion spiraled out of control? What if innocent lives were lost in the struggle for freedom? To complicate matters further, rumors reached Earth. Though humans still didn't know about the Galactic Council or their debates, they began noticing strange occurrences. Radio signals carrying their music seemed to vanish mid-transmission, only to reappear hours later distorted and fragmented. Satellites monitoring space detected unusual activity near Earth's orbit, as if something or someone was listening. Conspiracy theories flourished online, with some speculating that aliens were stealing human art for unknown purposes. Despite these oddities, humanity kept creating. Musicians composed new pieces, performers held concerts, and scientists pushed the boundaries of acoustic technology. They didn't need to understand why their work mattered. They simply knew it did. Each song, each rhythm, each vibration carried a piece of their soul, and they trusted that it would find its way to those who needed it most. Back in the stars, the movement inspired by human music gained momentum. Freedom fighters coordinated efforts, using melodies as codes to communicate without detection. A single drum beat could signal danger, while a rising crescendo might call allies to action. Even children joined the cause, humming tunes that carried messages of unity and hope. As the rebellion grew, so did the stakes. Tyrants tightened their grip, punishing dissent with brutal efficiency. Entire planets fell silent under oppressive regimes, their populations too afraid to speak or sing. Yet even in the darkest moments, human music persisted. It seeped through cracks in the walls, whispered in shadows, and echoed in the hearts of those who refused to give up. The turning point came when a coalition of rebel aliens decided to take a bold step. They broadcast Earth's most powerful composition directly to the Galactic Council's headquarters. The piece was a fusion of everything humanity had to offer: classical strings, tribal percussion, electronic synths, and soulful vocals woven together in a tapestry of sound. When the council heard it, though they were unprepared for the effect, the melody started softly, almost imperceptible, like a distant star twinkling in the night sky. Then it swelled, filling the chamber with layers of harmony and rhythm. Council members felt emotions they hadn't experienced in centuries: joy, sorrow, anger, and awe, all at once. Some wept openly, while others sat frozen, overwhelmed by the sheer power of the composition. And then came the bass line. Deep, resonant, and relentless, it vibrated through the room, shaking the very foundations of the council's authority. Lights flickered, panels glitched, and for a brief moment, the entire structure seemed to tremble. When the final note faded, silence filled the chamber. No one spoke. No one moved. The weight of what they had witnessed settled over them like a heavy blanket. Human music wasn't just sound. It was a force capable of challenging empires, toppling tyrants, and uniting galaxies. For the first time, the Council understood the true scope of humanity's potential. They realized that banning interaction with Earth wouldn't stop the spread of its influence. Music, like hope, couldn't be contained. It would always find a way to break free. As the session ended, a historic decision was made. Instead of continuing to suppress human music, the Council chose to open diplomatic channels with Earth. They hoped to learn more about the source of this extraordinary power, not to exploit it, but to ensure it was used responsibly. Humans, surprised by the sudden attention, welcomed the opportunity to share their culture. They sent recordings, performances, and scientific insights, eager to connect with beings from beyond the stars. Little did they know, their melodies had already changed the galaxy forever. The decision to open diplomatic channels with Earth marked a turning point, not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. For the first time in recorded history, beings from distant stars reached out to humans, not as conquerors or observers, but as equals. It was a moment filled with uncertainty, hope, and endless possibilities. At first, humans were confused. Strange signals began appearing on their satellites and radio telescopes, patterns too complex to be random noise. Scientists scrambled to decode them, while conspiracy theorists speculated about alien invasions or secret government experiments. But when the messages finally translated into simple words, "We hear you, we want to learn," the world collectively held its breath. News of the contact spread like wildfire. Governments convened emergency meetings. News outlets broadcast nonstop coverage, and social media exploded with theories, jokes, and heartfelt messages addressed to the stars. Amid the chaos, one thing became clear: humanity wasn't alone, and whoever or whatever was out there had been listening for a long time. The Galactic Council's representatives arrived in orbit around Earth weeks later. their massive ships visible even during daylight. These vessels weren't sleek or intimidating. Instead, they shimmered softly like mirages suspended in the sky. They emitted no sound, cast no shadow, and gave no indication of hostility. Their presence was peaceful, almost reverent. Humans responded cautiously at first. Military forces went on high alert, though no weapons were fired. Diplomats worked tirelessly to craft messages that conveyed curiosity rather than fear. The artists painted murals depicting unity between species, while musicians composed pieces meant to welcome their cosmic visitors. Humanity, despite its divisions, came together in ways it rarely had before. When communication finally began, it started with music. The council's envoys transmitted a melody, a harmonious blend of tones designed to mimic human compositions. It was their way of saying, "We understand you." Humans replied with a symphony performed by an orchestra representing cultures from every corner of the globe. The piece included African drums, Asian flutes, European strings, and indigenous chants, each element flowing seamlessly into the next. The exchange moved both sides deeply. For the council, it confirmed what they had suspected all along. Human music wasn't just sound, it was a reflection of humanity itself. Raw, diverse, imperfect, yet profoundly beautiful. For humans, it was proof that they weren't as insignificant as they'd once believed. Their creations had traveled across light years and touched lives they couldn't have imagined. As trust grew, so did the conversations. Humans shared their history, their triumphs, tragedies, and dreams for the future. They explained how music had always been a part of their existence, from ancient rituals to modern festivals. They spoke of how melodies helped them heal after loss, celebrate moments of joy, and find strength in times of struggle. The council listened intently, their advanced minds processing every detail. They marveled at humanity's ability to create without fully understanding why. Where other civilizations approached art with precision and logic, humans embraced chaos and emotion. This unpredictability, they realized, was humanity's greatest strength and its greatest mystery. In return, the council shared glimpses of their own worlds. They described civilizations where sound was used purely for function, never for expression. They showed recordings of planets where silence reigned supreme, broken only by mechanical hums or natural phenomena. Some council members admitted that hearing human music had awakened something in them, a longing for connection they hadn't known they were missing. But the discussions weren't without challenges. Questions arose about how to handle humanity's newfound influence. Should Earth's music be celebrated openly, or should its power remain a guarded secret? What responsibilities came with being recognized as a cultural beacon for the galaxy? These debates led to a pivotal moment. A coalition of rebel aliens, inspired by human resilience, presented a proposal. Establish a universal platform where all species could share their art, ideas, and stories. They called it the Cosmic Chorus, a digital network accessible to anyone willing to contribute. Human music would serve as its foundation, a reminder of what could be achieved when creativity transcended boundaries. The council hesitated at first, wary of losing control. But ultimately they agreed. The risks were undeniable, but so were the rewards. By fostering collaboration, they hoped to prevent conflicts fueled by misunderstanding and fear. For humans, Joining the cosmic chorus was both exhilarating and humbling. Musicians uploaded performances, scientists shared research on acoustics, and storytellers narrated tales passed down through generations. In return, they received contributions from across the galaxy, songs sung by crystalline beings, rhythms created by pulsating starlight, and harmonies woven from magnetic fields. Not everyone embraced the change immediately. Skeptics questioned whether opening themselves to the universe was wise. Others worried that humanity's uniqueness might fade as it blended with galactic culture. But over time, these fears eased. Humans discovered that sharing their art didn't diminish its value, it amplified it. Their melodies became threads in a grand tapestry, connecting lives separated by unimaginable distances. One event symbolized this unity more than any other. On a designated day, millions of beings tuned in to witness the final symphony, a collaborative performance featuring musicians from Earth and beyond. Humans played alongside creatures whose instruments defied description, some shaped like liquid, others glowing with bioluminescent hues. Together, they created a masterpiece unlike anything the galaxy had ever heard. The symphony started with a single note, soft and tentative, as if testing the waters. Then, layer by layer, the composition unfolded. Strings wove intricate patterns, percussion provided steady beats, and voices rose in harmony, blending languages and tones into a seamless whole. At its climax, the music seemed to transcend sound itself, becoming pure emotion, an expression of hope, gratitude, and shared purpose. When the final chord faded, silence fell. Not the heavy kind, but the quiet awe of witnessing something extraordinary. Across the galaxy, beings paused to reflect on what they had experienced. For many, it was a reminder that differences didn't have to divide, they could enrich. Back on Earth, life slowly returned to normal. People went back to work, school, and daily routines, but something had shifted. Streets felt livelier, skies seemed brighter, and hearts carried a little more hope. Humans now knew they were part of something bigger, connected to a vast web of life stretching far beyond their blue planet. The Galactic Council, too, underwent transformation. No longer content to govern from afar, they began engaging with civilization they had once ignored or feared. Policies shifted toward cooperation rather than control, and decisions were made with input from diverse voices, including those of humans. Of course, challenges remained. Not every species welcomed Earth's rise to prominence, and tensions occasionally flared. Yet, whenever doubt crept in, someone would play a familiar melody, a reminder of the day when music bridged worlds and changed everything. Years later, historians would look back on this era as a turning point in galactic history. It wasn't marked by war, discovery, or technological breakthroughs, but by something simpler and more profound. It was the moment when humanity taught the stars to sing, and in doing so, they proved that even the smallest notes could create the biggest changes.